I was inside the wiring of server rack 4, inhaling the comforting scent of hot ozone when the summons arrived. A nervous intern named Toby, shaking like a leaf, told me the younger boss wanted to see me in the glass-walled office immediately. We called that room the fishbowl, the place where careers went to die. I wiped the sticky thermal paste off my fingers onto my jeans. I was the only person keeping the logistics network alive, so I headed upstairs. Before I explain how I turned a massive company into a useless brick in less than 2 hours, do me a favor. If you enjoy watching entitled Young Bosses get a dose of reality, hit that subscribe button and smash the like. It helps the channel grow and keeps these stories coming. Now back to the execution. I walked into the fishbowl. The cooling was set to a temperature suitable for a meat locker. Sitting in the leather executive chair was the owner's son, Julian Bradford. Julian looked like he was created by a committee of Lecoulvers who believed that being an entrepreneur was a personality trait. He had an expensive haircut and teeth so white they could blind people. Next to him sat a young guy I had never seen before, wearing a designer hoodie that cost more than my truck, typing on a tablet. "Dennis," Julian said, not looking up from his smartphone screen. "Thanks for coming. Take a seat." I did not sit down. I had worked at this logistics firm since Julian was in grade school. I had survived 3 mergers, a major ransomware attack, and the database corruption of 2018. I did not sit for junior managers. "What is the issue, Julian? The systems are running clean, the daily backups are verified, and unless the database center is on fire, I have a server migration to complete." Julian finally looked up with a patronizing smile. "Yes, about that. We are making strategic shifts, moving toward a cloud-native, streamlined infrastructure." I shook my head. "Those are just marketing words. Our setup is already hybrid cloud. I built it myself. But it is legacy, like your methods. We need fresh eyes. This is Logan. He will take over as systems administrator immediately." The silence in the room was heavy. "Systems administrator, Julian? I am the systems coordinator. My agreement is signed with your father, Charles Bradford. I report only to the chief executive." "My father is on a long flight to Tokyo," Julian replied, leaning back. "He left me in charge of operations, and my first decision is to trim the excess." "You are done, Dennis." It felt like a physical blow. 10 years of middle-of-the-night calls, of missing birthdays because a database corrupted, and of saving ancient servers. Now I was replaced by a kid named Logan who spent his time vaping. "You are terminating my contract for him?" I asked. My voice low. "We are releasing you," Julian corrected. "Severance is standard, but we need your passing credentials right now." Logan spoke up. "Yes, if you could write down the root passwords on a sticky note, that would be great." A sticky note. He wanted the keys to a global logistics system on a piece of paper. The anger started in my chest, but on the outside I was ice. Under copyright law, specifically 17 U.S.C. Section 106, I held the exclusive rights to the custom diagnostic software I had written on my own time. The company only had a non-exclusive license to use them. Furthermore, under labor regulations, specifically 29 U.S.C. Section 2101, immediate termination of key personnel without notice was highly questionable. If they wanted my consent, they had to play by the rules. "Fine," I said. Julian looked surprised by my quick agreement. "Okay. Good. We appreciate your cooperation." I took out my personal smartphone. I opened the management application, a custom program I wrote because the official software was useless. I tapped the red button to log out of the master system. Then I looked Julian in the eyes. "I have logged out of the master control console," I said. "But you need to understand something before I leave. Make it quick, Dennis. We have a meeting soon." "The entire system," I explained, "runs on a security script. It requires a physical biometric handshake, specifically my thumbprint scan, every 120 minutes to confirm that the authorized coordinator is active. It is a protective measure I built after our security incident. Your father approved it." Julian laughed. "A biometric scan? What is this, a spy movie? Be serious." "It is a strict security protocol, Julian. Without my physical scan, the validation will fail. When it fails, the system assumes a hostile breach. It will lock down the entire network to prevent data theft." "We will just write a patch to bypass it," Logan said. I almost smiled. "This network is built on legacy code and custom databases. Python will not help you here. You have exactly 2 hours before the server rack goes dark. And when it goes dark, the automated systems will lock, the customer portals will drop, and the warehouse units will freeze. Julian stood up, attempting to look imposing. You are making this up. Give us your computer and leave. Security will guide you out. I placed my system laptop on the table. I set my company card on top of it. I looked at the clock. It was exactly 10 in the morning. 2 hours, Julian, I said. You have until noon. Good luck with your modern shift. I turned around and walked out of the room. I did not run, and I did not argue. The countdown had started, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The walk down the hallway felt incredibly peaceful. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed quietly, a sound I had ignored for 10 years, but today it sounded like a clock ticking down. Employees nodded as I passed the cubicles. Brenda from accounting waved from her desk. They had no idea. Nobody knew that the captain had been thrown off the ship, and 2 children were now trying to steer it through a storm. I entered the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. As the metal doors shut, cutting off the view of the office, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The constant stress of system uptime, the late-night alarms, the endless responsibility, it was all gone. I walked out to the parking lot. The morning sky was gray and quiet. I walked to my old Ford truck, opened the door, and took out a cigarette. I lit it, inhaling the warm smoke, holding it before releasing a gray cloud into the cool air. 2 hours, I said to the empty parking lot. Upstairs in the climate-controlled office, I knew what they were doing. Julian was probably telling Logan how easy it was to remove the older employees. He would say I was just angry and making up stories about security scans. Logan would be looking at my old ThinkPad, complaining about the old hardware and planning to order new laptops with a company credit card. They would not even try to log in for another 20 minutes. They would be too busy celebrating their new positions. But my network did not care about their plans. The network is a cold machine governed by logic. At 10:15, the first automated task attempted to run. It was a simple database check that sent a signal to the shipping portals to say the network was active. I imagined the system running the lines of code, check user credentials, verify biometric timestamp. The system would find that the timestamp was old. It would not lock down yet, but it would flag a warning, a yellow indicator on the main screen. But Julian and Logan were not looking at the main screen. They were probably looking at expensive clothes online. I finished my cigarette and started my truck. I was not going home yet. I wanted a front row seat for the show. I drove across the street to a small dive bar called the Library. It was a dark, quiet place that smelled of old wood and spilled drinks. I sat at the wooden bar, ordered a glass of whiskey, and set my personal smartphone in front of me. I had built a secondary notification loop years ago. It was a private channel that sent text alerts to my phone whenever the servers flagged a critical error. I had not disabled it. Why would I? It was about to provide the best entertainment of the year. At 10:45, my phone buzzed. The alert read, Administrator Login Failure. Origin, Executive Office Suite. I smiled and took a drink of my whiskey. They are trying to get in, I muttered. I could visualize the scene. Logan would be typing on my laptop, his fingers sticky from lunch. Julian, the password is not working. It says access denied, security key missing. Julian would tell him to try administrator or 12345. Logan would try those, then try root, and get locked out. Call the support team, Julian would yell. Tell them to reset the system. My phone buzzed again. A new ticket had been created in the support database. Subject login issue, fix immediately. Priority low. The IT helper, Eli, was a smart young guy. I had trained him well. I had told him that if any request came from the executive suite without my written approval, he should put it at the bottom of the list. Eli knew that if I was not there, the rules did not change. The system countdown was now at 90 minutes. The automated checks had failed 3 times. The security script was moving from warning mode to defensive mode. When a global logistics network gets defensive, it starts closing doors. The whiskey was warm in my stomach, relaxing the tension I had carried for years. The bar was quiet, the only sound coming from a television in the corner. At 11:10, my phone buzzed again. Critical alert, load balancer failure, server node 4 offline. The cascade had started. The network was designed like a stable structure, but held together by specific check routines. The load balancer managed traffic between our primary server and the backup site. Every hour, it requested authorization to update the security keys. Without the biometric scan, the system assumed the backup link was compromised. It did not wait. It cut the connection to protect the database. In the main building, the office lights were still on. The employees were still sitting at their desks. But on the logistics floor, the screens were beginning to freeze. I pictured Helen at the dispatch desk. She had been routing trucks for 20 years. She would be clicking the screen, asking why the shipping database was spinning. Sean in the inventory department would be trying to access the loading codes and getting a security warning. Julian and Logan would be starting to sweat. My phone buzzed with a text from Eli. "Dennis, Julian is screaming about database passwords. He says you left the company. Tell me this is not true. Also, the dashboard is flashing yellow. What is happening?" I did not reply. I took another drink. I wanted them to experience the silence. At 11:20, my smartphone buzzed with a text message from an unrecognized number. I knew who it was immediately. "Dennis, this is Julian. I hope there are no hard feelings about this morning. Logan is having a small issue connecting his profile. Does the database really need your scan, or is there a bypass code we can use to push an update? Let me know." A small issue. A bypass code. The language of a manager who did not understand that he was sitting in a boat with a hole in the bottom. He thought this was a simple setting he could change. I typed a short reply. "No code. It is physical biometric verification. You have 40 minutes left, Julian." I put my phone back on the bar. At 11:30, the notifications on my private app were coming in rapid succession, scrolling down the screen. Database write lock active. API connection timeout. Shipping portal link severed. That last one was the critical blow. We were a transport company. If the system could not communicate with the external delivery carriers, we could not process freight. We were just a warehouse full of heavy boxes we could not move. My phone started ringing. The screen showed Julian's name. I let it ring. It rang a second time, then a third. I answered on the fourth ring. "Yes, Julian," I said, sounding like I was watching television. "Dennis." Julian's voice was much higher than it had been this morning. "Why is the shipping database down? We are losing $40,000 every minute. The trucks are backing up." "I told you." "Julian, the security script requires my physical scan. The system thinks the administrator has been removed by force. It is protecting the data. Then fix it. Give Logan the bypass command." "I cannot send my thumbprint through a phone call." "Julian, unless you have a way to copy my hand, you cannot bypass the security loop." "This is illegal," he screamed. "I will take you to court. I will call the police for system interference." "I have not touched the system, Julian," I said calmly. "I am sitting in a bar. I did exactly what you ordered." I walked out. "The network is running the security protocol your father signed. This is your decision, not mine." "Logan is trying to force an override right now," Julian said, his voice shaking. I shook my head. "Tell Logan that if he attempts to force a database mount without the security key, he will trigger the safety purge. The script will delete the encryption keys. The company data will become useless noise. Tell him to stop typing." I heard a muffled conversation. Julian was shouting at Logan to stop touching the keyboard. Logan sounded terrified in the background. "You are bluffing," Julian said, trying to sound strong. "You have 25 minutes to find out," I replied, and hung up the phone. The bartender poured me another drink without being asked. "Sounds like a complicated project," he said. "Just a young manager learning about system security," I answered. The bar was beginning to fill with the lunch crowd, mostly workers from the nearby construction yards. They had dirt on their boots and looked tired. They were my kind of people. I fit right in, though my work was with servers and code. My phone was vibrating constantly now, the screen a green waterfall of warning text. At 11:40, the messages from the employee group chat started appearing. I was still in the private channel we created years ago. "Anyone know why the system is frozen?" Helen from dispatch wrote. "Julian is running around the floor shouting at the server racks, literally screaming at the metal doors." "Eli says Dennis was terminated," Sean from inventory replied. "If Dennis is gone, who knows how to run the shipping bridge?" "I am hiding in the server closet," Eli texted. "Logan just asked me what a directory path is. We are in serious trouble." I smiled. They were not worried about the company. They were worried about the sheer incompetence of the leadership. I knew what Julian would do next. When a spoiled child breaks an expensive toy, he calls his father. Julian would be dialing Charles Bradford's private satellite phone. But Charles was an old-school executive. When he flew across the ocean, he turned off his phone. He called it his quiet time. He would be sitting in first class, drinking tea, and reading a book, completely unaware that his son was setting his life work on fire. At 11:45, my phone rang. The caller was Henry, a senior engineer from Net Vigilance, our external technology contractor. "Dennis," Henry said, "we just received a critical ticket from Julian. He wants us to log in remotely and disable your biometric security script. He says he is the director in charge." "He is," I said, "for the day." "Right. But I am looking at the system documentation you filed last year, the security agreement. It says that any remote override of the validation script without the coordinator present violates our privacy compliance with our medical clients. Under federal law, specifically the regulations protecting sensitive data, doing this would trigger an immediate audit. I could lose my engineering license and the company could face massive fines. I told him no. He threatened to fire me too. "That sounds like Julian," I said. "Do not touch it, Henry. If you bypass the script, you take on the legal liability. Let the system run." "I agree," Henry said. "We are documenting his request and our refusal." "Good luck, Dennis. You are a tough man." "I am just keeping the system secure, Henry," I said, and ended the call. At 11:50, the legal consequences were closing in. Eli sent a text. "Julian is crying in the glass office. Logan is sitting on the floor. The hallway lights just went out. Is that normal?" The system was reducing power consumption to keep the database core running. I texted back, "Tell the team to save their work locally. The network storage will shut down in 5 minutes." "You are a scary man, Dennis," Eli wrote. "But this is amazing. I was just thorough. I had spent 10 years protecting this network. I built the security system to prevent anyone from compromising client data, including a director's son who did not understand the laws." At 11:55, Julian called. I answered on the 5th ring. "Dennis," he said, his voice low and shaking. "The arrogance was gone. Please, I am sorry. I made a mistake this morning. Just come back. We can discuss a contracting arrangement." "A contractor?" I replied. "You terminate my contract after 10 years, humiliate me, and now you want me to fix your mess as a contractor." "The external engineers will not touch it," Julian pleaded. "They say it is a legal issue. We are losing $40,000 a minute. This is a massive dissipation of assets for the corporation." "It is a legal issue, Julian. Go to my desk." "Is my laptop there?" "Yes. Open the screen. Access the public read-only folder using the guest profile. Do it now." I heard him fumbling and cursing under his breath. "Okay, I am in. I see the document." "Read it aloud, Julian. Read it very carefully so that you and your visionary friend understand the situation you have created. You will find that any contract modification made without the coordinator present is void ab initio under our compliance standards." I heard him scrolling, then a long pause of disbelief. When he spoke, his voice was trembling as he read. "In the event of a system reset or administrative change, the primary coordinator must be physically present to verify the chain of custody. Any attempt to bypass this validation loop will be considered a breach of the Federal Data Protection Act. Such action will result in an automated alert to the Department of Homeland Security Cyber Division and an immediate freeze of corporate digital assets." Julian was silent. "You set the system to alert the government?" "I integrated it with compliance. We handle medical transport. Federal law requires that security. If Logan tries to force entry, it is a federal crime. You would be looking at prison time. That Italian suit will not look good in a federal facility." "What do I do?" he whispered. "You cannot do anything, Julian. You have less than 2 minutes. The system assumes a hostile takeover. The files will encrypt, the database will lock, and the notification will send." "Come back," he begged. "Name your price, double your salary, anything." I looked at the clock. It was 11:58. "It takes 10 minutes to drive there, Julian. Even if I left now, the clock would run out. You wanted to cut the excess. Well, you cut the core. I hope you know how to rebuild a global database from paper." "Dennis, wait." I hung up. I watched the clock tick toward 12. At noon exactly, The notifications on my phone stopped. The text froze. Then a red alert appeared, system lockdown active. Data encrypted, compliance alert sent. Noons, I said. I called the bartender. Bill, please, leave the bottle. When a modern office building is controlled by a central system, you forget how much actually relies on that network connection. When the lockdown occurred, the smart building became a dark concrete prison. Eli sent frantic audio notes to the group chat. The window shades just slammed shut. It is pitch black in here except for emergency exit lights, and the cooling has stopped completely. The air is already getting hot. Julian is kicking the glass wall of his office, and Logan is packing his bag. I sat at the bar, drinking water, staying sharp, and waiting for the phone call I knew was coming. At 12:15, Charles Bradford called from his private line. I took a slow sip of my drink before answering, letting it ring several times. "Dennis," he said, his voice deep, sounding tired but dangerous. "Hello, Charles," I said. "How was the flight?" "Diverted because my dashboard shows the company has completely disappeared from the grid. I have 40 messages from my son, and a federal alert asking if our network was hacked. Julian claims you went rogue and locked the system." "Julian is incorrect, Charles. I did not lock anything. I was terminated by your son at 10. I logged out as required by security. The system is waiting for the authorized coordinator. That is the lock working exactly as you paid me to build it. He fired you? He did. He wanted to replace me with Logan, who does not know what a directory path is. And you let the network lock. I followed security procedures, Charles. Your son was in charge. The system followed the logic. I am landing in 30 minutes. Meet me in the lobby, Dennis." "I do not work there, Charles. I am enjoying my free time. Dennis, get to the office. We will resolve this. It will not be under my old agreement, Charles, and it will not be cheap." "We will talk in 30 minutes, he barked and ended the call. I smiled, paid for my drinks, and walked out. The show was moving to the final act. The drive back was pleasant. I drove slowly, letting the silence in the building settle. When I arrived, the parking lot was in complete confusion. Delivery trucks were backed up onto the street, honking. Employees were standing outside looking at the dark windows of the building. I parked, leaned against my truck, and waited. A black sedan drove quickly into the lot, driving over the grass. Charles Bradford stepped out. He was 65, built like a construction worker, with gray hair and a determined face. He spotted me and gestured toward the entrance. "Let us go," he said. We entered the dark lobby. The security gates were locked shut. Charles did not hesitate. He walked up to the gate, kicked the locking arm with his heavy boot, and broke the plastic mechanism. The gate swung open. "It is open now," he growled. We climbed the 12 flights of stairs. In silence, Charles was moving fast, driven by anger. When we reached the executive floor, the air was warm. Julian was sitting at the table, surrounded by plastic bottles, his head in his hands. Charles pushed the door open. It hit the glass wall with a loud sound. Julian jumped up, his face red and wet with tears. "Dad!" Dennis sabotaged the database. He put a lock on the server. Charles walked to the table. He did not look at his son. He picked up my laptop. "And why did he do that, Julian?" "Because we were moving to the cloud. I released him to save money, and he locked us out. He terminated my contract at 10 this morning," I said from the doorway. "He wanted to put Logan in charge." Charles turned to Julian. "You terminated our primary systems coordinator while I was over the ocean? When we have 3 major hospital contracts up for renewal next week. This is a direct breach of fiduciary duty to this corporation, Julian." "He was old-fashioned, Dad. Where is Logan?" Charles asked. "He left," I explained. "He realized he could not bypass a compliance lock, and he ran before the compliance officers arrived." Charles looked at his son, his face filled with disappointment. "Julian, do you know why Dennis is our guarantor? Do you know why I pay him more than our operations manager? He is just a technician, Dad." "No, you cannot replace him," Charles shouted. The sound made the glass windows vibrate. "Dennis built the custom integration that allows us to clear medical customs. He wrote the database structures that keep our client contracts legally compliant. He is the only reason we are a secure logistics firm instead of a simple trucking company." Charles slammed his hand on the table. "You did not just fire an employee, Julian. You cut the power line because you wanted to save money on the utility bill. This rash action has caused a severe dissipation of assets. Julian sat down, looking small and defeated. Charles turned to me. Restore the network, Dennis. I cannot, Charles. I am not an employee. I do not have authorization. Charles looked at Julian. Rehire him, Julian. Right now. Apologize. Julian looked at me. Dennis, I am sorry. I rehire you. Please fix the system. I am not interested in my old agreement, Julian, I said. The management here seems unstable. Charles let out a short laugh. Okay, Dennis. What are your terms? Full autonomy over the systems department, I said. No oversight from operations or from him. I pointed at Julian. A 5-year agreement guaranteed and a 20% raise, retroactive to January. Agreed, Charles said. And I want his office, I added, pointing to the corner space. The ventilation in my old office is poor. Charles looked at his son. Pack your things, Julian. Move to the 4th floor. Julian did not argue. He gathered his papers and walked out without looking at me. Charles looked at me. Are we satisfied, Dennis? We are, I said. Let us restore the system. I walked down to the basement server room. As I passed the systems department, the employees cheered. Eli was waiting by the door. We are close to the final database purge, Dennis, Eli said. 90 seconds left. I unlocked the heavy door, walked to the main terminal, and sat in my old chair. The screen was flashing red, the countdown ticking down, 85 seconds. I placed my thumb on the security scanner. The glass square glowed green. The screen flickered, the red text disappeared, and a message appeared. Biometric match confirmed. System restoring. Around us, the cooling fans began to hum. The air grew cool, and the red status lights turned to green down the rows of servers. We are green, Eli shouted. I typed a few commands to manage the sudden traffic load. My phone began to buzz with notifications as our delivery systems came back online. I looked at the security camera feed. I saw Julian walking out of the building carrying a cardboard box. I opened my desk drawer, took out a bottle of old whiskey, and poured a small drink. The network was running clean. The cooling was active. The databases were secure. I was the system's coordinator, and my system was alive. I sent a message to the team chat. System is clean. Do not touch my settings again. See you tomorrow. We were back in business, and my new contract was secure. If you enjoyed watching a bad manager get replaced, subscribe for more stories. Your colleagues will appreciate it.